Welcome to the ZoomInfo Labs podcast. I'm Ben Salzman.
And I'm Millie Beetham.
Today, we have a legendary guest joining us, Jason Lemkin, the mastermind behind SaaStr, the world's largest community for SaaS founders and execs.
Jason's seen it all, from founding and selling EchoSign, scaling SaaStr, putting on incredible events, and building a community of over 500,000. In this episode, we hear Jason's takes on how to grow a company the right way, mastering multi-product strategies, and why recruiting might just be the hardest part of being a founder.
He also drops some gems on how AI is shaking up SaaS and the future of sales.
If you're into SaaS, which of course you are, you won't want to miss this one. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the ZI Labs podcast. I'm Ben Salzman with my esteemed co-host Henry Schuck. Very excited to have on Jason Lemkin, the CEO of SaaStr. Jason,
Great
welcome.
to be here. Thank you.
You're a hero of mine. I've been following your stuff for a really long time.
How long, Ben? How long?
So when I joined a startup in 2013, and I mean this seriously, my CEO told me, I don't really have time to manage you, but Jason Lemkin's your boss. Read his blog post first. If he puts out a post about a process and you come and ask me about it, I'm going to fucking yell at you.
I think the real OGs followed Jason on Quora. So
that's really OG. It's really OG. It's really OG. Yeah.
So Jason, if you don't already know him, is a founder of SaaStr. You built a community over 500,000 SaaS executives. You run a big events business. You have an investment firm. You do a lot of things to, I think, help lift up the SaaS community. Maybe just do a quick intro for our audience.
That's a pretty good one. Kind of since I sold my last company accidentally to a big tech company, I've been kind of on a mission to help other founders. And so fast forward, oy vey, 12 years, we've got 10,000 pieces of content, thousands of podcasts, 15,000 people a year come to our events. Henry came to Barcelona when we were there. And we're kind of quirky, because we're on a mission to just help other founders and executives. So it's a lot of folks produce content now, which is cool, but I do think not having a game to play makes it kind of special. And I was like a pretty good founder. I had a 9-figure exit and an 8-figure exit. I didn't build a multi-billion-dollar company like our esteemed host, but I was just good enough to see who was better than me, to see the Henrys and the others, and maybe that's what's special about me is I went far enough to know the game. And I had enough. I have enough respect to know the folks that are better than me, like Henry, and I think that's produced maybe a little bit of magic.
Jason, I don't know if that's true.
It's true.
What is different between you and me, other than I stuck around longer?
Well, I'm going to guess a couple things. One is we're probably equally committed, right? But you're probably even more tenaciously focused on the goal, like doing crazy M&A and bootstrapping your company and all that stuff. I was always focused on the goal, but maybe a little conservative. Maybe you built, I don't know this, maybe you built an even better team than I did. For example, that can be a difference. Maybe you're a better recruiter, right? As a founder, the hardest thing is recruiting once you have product market fit. Product market fit's the hardest thing, but then after that, nothing matters but the team, right? So I don't know, I think you have a multi-decade commitment, right? And I don't know that I had it as a founder. I was still learning each time. I was insanely committed, but maybe not for 20 years, right?
There's recruiting, and there's also just like people building. And I think a lot of bootstrapped founders who are less like capital infused, that they have to actually be great at developing their people, almost equally to their ability to recruit great people. Because you oftentimes, I bootstrapped the company to 25 million in revenue, and then I brought in private equity. Private equity wasn't like, go spend everything you can to grow. They're like, this thing looks good, spend a little more and make it twice as big. And so I didn't have a heavy budget to go get the best people. I found good people who I thought I could develop into great people.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think when I reflect on it, I think what my shortcomings are as a founder, right? Which you have addressed, what the best address is, it's not recruiting one management team, it's recruiting 5 or 6. I mean, how long have you been doing, when was ZoomInfo founded?
2007.
Okay, 2007. So the average tenure of a VP, if they're good, is probably 3.5 years, right? So help me with the math. What's 17 divided by 3.5? 5 management teams, right? So I remember as a founder where I remember I was sitting with my board when we just crossed 10 million in revenue, and we were growing 100%. I thought that wasn't good enough back then, and cash flow positive. We didn't have SaaStr or Henry to help. I'm like, we suck. I'm comparing myself to Dropbox and Yammer. I'm like, we're terrible. But deep down, what I was really saying is, I don't know that I have the energy to recruit another management team. I did have the energy, but I felt that was I'm looking around my team, and my team had pros and cons, right? It turned out, with hindsight, I had a great 1.0 management team, right? Went on to be CEO of Gong, CEO of Brad, all these, but I could see the limitations, like you talked about. And I'm like, gosh, I don't want to recruit the C-level folks. I don't want to top my team. I don't want to do this. And maybe that's a personal failing, which is, to be a CEO like you got to be like constantly. I think you got to spend 20 to 30% of your time soft recruiting execs. Nothing else matters, right? You can talk the roadmap until you're blue in the face, or sales strategy, but if you don't have the team to do it at ZoomInfo scale, there's no point in talking to your office, right? So that's where I think you're better than me among many things. Is it's tiring to rebuild the management team, isn't it? Maybe you love it, but I don't know that anyone loves it.
I mean, I think part of it is like, there's this piece where you go like, yeah, you should be recruiting 20 to 30% of your time all the time. The other side of it is you need to be evaluating your team 100% of the time. And so 100% of the time, you're trying to think like, is this the right person? I think it's the right person. Are they doing the right things? Are they? And if they're not, how much time do I have to like get them to be doing the right things and building a good team? Or do I have to go start meeting other people? And that's probably the most tiring part, because you kind of want to get your team, feel really good about them. But if you're trying to build, it's like you're constantly evaluating if they're the right people.
And you got to do that. And I think if you're smart, you can do that. Anyone smart can be a critic, right? Anyone smart can be a critic. The hard part is not only doing all of that, building your company, evaluating them, but then realizing, hey, Lemkin might, for whatever reason, quit tomorrow, and I got to get 20 more candidates in on Monday and not have this wreck the company. I think that's hard. And the best, if we get into revenue leaders on this, what I realized makes an incredible CRO or VP of sales is they've always got 10. They're constantly, like, the best recruiters on planet Earth is a great VP of sales, because they need a bench of leaders. They need managers and directors and VPs and SVPs, and and then people and soldiers are going to fall, and the folks that were good at 1 million won't scale to 10 or 20, and they know that they will. And the hardest job is sales, because the number goes up all the time, right? The stress goes up. So if you're not building, and so I think the best sales leaders are even better recruiters than CEOs, and I love them, but you got to learn this as a founder. Like, you will stall out. And if you want to talk about why founders I've invested in have come up short sometimes, right? It's this second management team theme I see. Sometimes it hits you emotionally, like it did me around 10 or 15 million. But I think you hit a wall around 40 to 50 when you can't build a great, and I see too many founders who that second management, first they screw up the first VP of sales, classic SaaStr post, right? Then they finally get that person, and then they're at 20, 30, 40 million. They're like, I'm ready for the Microsoft guy. I knew I shouldn't do it in the beginning, but I've been looking for a year. I'm not as good a recruiter as Henry, and I'm ready for the mic. And then the company hits a wall, and that next level, especially for outsiders, I've found, is really hard. If you don't have this incredible network, if you're somewhere outside, if you're in Boston or Europe or someone, you just don't bump into 10 million CROs on the street. And this second the two things I'm obsessed about now that we've been doing this for a while, right? The things I'm obsessed about now for scaling are multi-product earlier and your second management team. Multi-product, because these are where I see the stumbles. We talk a lot about the first, I can help you get your first management team, but if you get tired on the second management team, you'll decelerate just when it's good. And I think we're learning now, every single leader, maybe you'll disagree, which would be interesting, but almost everyone I talk to is looking and now saying, criminy, I should have gone multi-product early. And there are so many folks north of 100 million ARR today that are single product that behind closed doors are fracked today. It's too late. It takes time to build up a suite like ZoomInfo. Even if you build the products in a year, it takes so long for that revenue to get material, doesn't it? 2-3 years.
Yeah,
so if you start now at 100 million or 200 million in revenue to try to go to IPO, you're kind of fracked. There's so many single product companies at 100 million, and I don't know if we got on a tangent. These are the two things I obsess about this. That I was good at the second, but not good at the first.
Mind? Who's done a second product well?
I mean, the one that has kicked us in the ass in a fun way is rippling, and it took me a while to get it with Parker. I've known Parker since the beginning of SaaStr. He was on Quora, so known him since then. And he started to talk about the compound startup of how after the Zenefits experience, he wanted to build all the HR products, right? And I think he was informed, like he started Zenefits and then Gusto, Zen Payrolls over here, and they're all friends. And within 2 years, Zenefits built payroll and payroll built insurance, and like it all collapsed even further than in other categories. So he talks about compound startups, and he did it live at SaaStr Europa. Watch on YouTube; it's really good. But he's also honest. He's like, I raised $1 billion to do this, and I have 5 teams. I didn't build 5 products. I have 5 venture scale teams. And so at first Parker was saying this, and I'm like, great for you, love you, not applicable to 99.9% of the world. But then I thought about it. I'm like, we got to do some of it, Henry. Like we can't build 5 teams and 5 products, but. My meta team for SaaStr annual this year, I was writing my slides, is the bar's gone up, right? It's time to step up or decelerate. The bar's gone up everything, and the bar's gone up on multi-product. And so we all got to do it earlier. And so we can't all be rippling, but I think if we can study a little bit of this case study and maybe do it without $1.5 billion or $2 billion spent pre-IPO, I think we can learn from this without fully emulating it, right? Because I think Parker is right, even if we can't all copy all of it. And literally every board meeting I'm in, this is my number one topic. Like here's where I'm a nudge. Great guys, glad we're at 100%, whatever, great. But like, where are we going to be? We're too late on multi-product. Well, we're thinking, we're doing experiments faster, right? And the other one I tell people now is as soon as you try multi-product and you get even $1 million in ARR, if as a founder you believe in it, go all in because you're going to run out of time. If you're at 40 million or 30 million and you're like, okay, I tried this new thing, this new marketing thing I'm adding, and it's at $1.5 million, but I don't know, I'm like, you kind of run down, like if it's not the right product, shoot it. But it's pretty hard to get someone to buy a couple million of revenue, right? Yeah. Do it. The other one, ZoomInfo we should talk about, but HubSpot has gone multi-product for the ages. For the ages. And, HubSpot, like a year ago, we read up on SaaStr, they stopped breaking down the revenue per cloud. You can tell me how public companies do it, right? But you don't have to break out your revenue if you don't want to, right? But like a year and a half ago, it was great. They like this from marketing, this from CRM, this from support, and they stopped. And the reason they stopped is marketing stopped growing as they saturated and CRM blew up, right? And so at 2.5 billion in revenue, we're looking at HubSpot, they're growing, high 20%. Where would it be without CRM? Where would it be, right? This would be a niche product at $1 billion and something growing single digits. And so this is another one we can all, because they did sequence this. And I met Dharmesh super early. I met him in 2013. He was on Quora in the early days, but I met him because they were thinking of going into CRM back then. And he and Brian had already thought about it for years. Before they launched the product, they were free for years. It was a big bet. But that's another one like Rippling that I study carefully. Because if you mis-sequence it, then you just hit a plateau, right? And it's just brutal. It's just brutal. And I'll stop on this point, but when we were at SaaStr Europa this year in London, I was backstage with a huge VC, top one, right? Top famous VC backstage, kind of had his head in his hands. And he was like, Jason, I've got like 4 companies at 100 million, not growing now. And we kind of went through it and they were all single product. And there's macro issues and Zoom, we could talk about macro issues and blah, blah, blah. But if you just have that one product, we run out of people on planet Earth, unless you're Canva to buy our products.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it comes back to, or I think the foundational point is if you want high net retention, you get high net retention in 2 ways. You get it through high net renewal rate and then high upsell into the customer base. And particularly during, the last 2 years, if teams are shrinking, then you don't have the users to expand to. And so then you end up with no lever to offset scrutiny on net renewal rate or reduction in seats with another product to improve net retention. And net retention, when you hit 100 million, you just can't sell enough to drive 40 points of growth if your net retention is 100. It's like much more difficult to sell $40 million of net new logos And so you get to this point where regardless of how good you are at new sales, if you're not driving upsell in the customer base through new product, you get stuck.
You get stuck, yeah. And then the upsell, the base is great, and like Datadog's another great example of the base. The really bad arse one is when it's a different buyer. That's the tough play, right? Isn't it? Yep. Is when you're like, okay, we've got ZoomInfo, or we've got HubSpot for CRM. Going to it, this is not an upsell anymore. This is a side sell, right? But if you do the side sell, you unlock more TAM, right? Because it's harder, right? But it is more TAM. So that's one to think about. It's like, oh my, the easy thing in the second product is to sell the exact same buyer, right? That's what.
Yep.
But you got to think as founders, is that the right decision? Because we may exhaust our budget, right? Versus doing what our organization's tired, no one wants to work any harder, we don't have enough story points, but maybe we got to use our brand and risk it and sell to a new line of business, right? Super hard, but it's all hard, right?
Yeah, it's harder because right? All of a sudden you end up needing to enable your sales team not only to go find the other buyer, but also to be able to speak their language and understand what they care about and know how to navigate the sale, over there. That getting, new product, get product market fit, awesome. Now you got to go enable the sales team to go take it to market. And obviously, if it's the same buyer with the same relationships you already have that trust you and view you as a partner, that's a much easier sale than starting from not exactly zero, because hopefully you've done contracting. You don't have to go through procurement again. You don't have to go through security and privacy review, but you have to go over to somebody else who doesn't really know you and try to convince them to buy your product too. That's tougher.
It's tougher, right? But everything's tougher today, I think. I think we got to step up. I think we all have to step up.
Maybe going back, Jason, to your time at EchoSign.
Yeah.
You built this business. You sold it to Adobe.
Yeah.
What was the thing that allowed you all to punch above your weight from a go-to-market perspective?
There's a couple things I didn't think about until recently, but it's really interesting that we only had 20-something sellers, and 10 of them went on to be top CROs, right? CROs at Brex, CRO at Ripley now, Gong, CO at Gong, CRO at Gong, Seismic, a long list of others. Half of them went on to be leading. Now, not in a week. We sold 10 years ago. But why? How did 10 of those folks become so dominant? It's really the answer is so simple, but because we could write about this all the time. It really is the best do attract the most ambitious under them, right? And so. This is why when you cut a corner in VP and we're all tired, I know we could all write it. Henry and I could write this post 100 times, but if you cut the little corner, you get this mediocre team. And if you hire a magnet, then the talent just flocks to it. And when Brendan Cassidy had come, he just came from LinkedIn to us, and then everyone just wanted to work for this guy, and he recruited 30% of his time, right? And he built up this amazing bench, and he built up Sam Blond, and then Sam Blond took that playbook, very different one, and recruited all these folks that went on to lead Modern Health and Rippling and Gong and all these other folks, and they just become these magnets. And Sam Blond, who was at Founders Fund and left Brex, we were getting dinner the other night, and we were talking about a company he worked at that's less well known, but it did great. It actually he joined a startup, and he took them from 2 to 10 in 1 year and 10 to 30 the next year. Pretty good, right? And then this one did a little less well, but he did great. And I asked him, how did you do it? He's like, I brought sellers to this company that they could never otherwise get. There's just no chance. The quality of people that want, and he very humble guy, but he's like, because I had a little bit, the quality of people that came to work for me was, and it did move the needle, right? And so I had nothing to do with it. I didn't even know anything about, that's why I started SaaStr. I knew nothing about sales. I just knew kind of go knock on the door. Hey, Henry, will you buy my product? I knew how to do that. All founders can do founder-led sales, right? I knew nothing, but this magnet, it took me 10 years to see it. And honestly, some of those folks that I listed, those CROs, were really good on our team. Some of them I'm more surprised.
Yeah.
They're leading top cloud companies.
Yeah.
They're all good, but I didn't have the vision as a second time CEO, but first time I didn't quite see it. But 50% is pretty good, right? Pretty good, right?
I heard one of the Stripe brothers make this point in a lecture, which is, the takeaway is don't hire B players, just hire A players. And people kind of know that. But the point he made was to actually be able to do that in your company, you have to be okay with taking way longer to get the next person than you want to take. And you're hiring a new VP of sales, you're on your 20th interview, and then you're just like, forget it. That guy's the best of everybody I've seen. He's not the best, but he is the best of everybody I've seen. And I guess talent for this position kind of sucks right now. The market's no good. So let me just get this guy who's the best of the group I've met and bring him in. And that never, ever works. And the real test to are you going to be committed to hiring an A team is in that moment being like, we're still going. We just got to keep bringing people in until I find somebody that I really believe is an A player.
Yeah. There is the rule of, like, most of us we pretend we interview 30 people for a role, but we don't really interview 30. Like we look at 30 emails, but we don't really do like screen 30. Yeah. And so there's you don't have to get to number 20, 30. If you're at 20, you're already seeing, I'm like, this is the best I'm going to do. I want to do 9 more. I'm already, but yeah, you'll always regret it, right? And I guess that maybe you haven't done this as info, if you could share. I think if you have any scale and you've gotten to 30, right? I'm sure John or Patrick, it's a different point, but maybe you just got to promote someone on the team. Maybe it's time to promote. I think half your folks, if you're SMB, half your folks should be internal promotions anyway. You might as well just look around the room and say, it's Lemkin.
So Jason, give founders advice here. Yeah. I love promoting from within, and I also like finding profiles. And I often find profiles that maybe aren't perfect for the role, but I see something in them that I think is going to be perfect for ZoomInfo. Oftentimes, when I've been in a boardroom, there's this pressure from investors that goes, not the right pedigree, didn't go to the right schools, not from Salesforce or ServiceNow or one of these great companies, not good enough for the company. And then you've got a CEO or a founder there going like, well, but like, look at, I think this person who didn't go to the best schools, didn't work at ServiceNow, but I believe for all these other reasons that they're going to be great for this position. How would you navigate? How would you tell a founder to navigate that?
Well, first, I literally wrote, I thought this was a very niche post on SaaStr just the other day, why your VCs give you terrible hiring advice. It's very short. You can go find it right now. And it's because most of them haven't been operators or were a long time ago or another category. And if you've never done something, you want the person from wherever, from the brand. Like and actually most folks on boards have no sales experience, right? If they have any, it's product or CEO. Some of them do, but they're all attracted to brands if you haven't done it, right? So the most atomic advice is man or woman up and push back. Just say no. I went through that. Even with my first VP of sales, who was from LinkedIn, first single-digit hire, but there was one job he had that one of my investors didn't love. Okay, he's like, this was a dumb thing to do, and he said, "Don't hire him." And I listened, and I said, "Thank you." And then I respect. People are actually probably would do it differently today. They'd skip more steps, and I just hired him. You just gotta. The thing is, it's a great question. So one, realize they're going to give you bad advice. These VCs, they just haven't done it. They're not all bad people. And two, going to your prior point, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. When you meet a magical executive, a 10, the magical ones, it's hard enough to find someone that will actually do the full job, like all of it. That's pretty rare. And then when you find one that cares almost as much as you do, 50% as much, 80% as much, you will want to hire them so badly. And I love Brendan, but when I had this little argument, just with one of my investors arguing him, I already was in love with him, okay, for a variety of reasons. Like, it didn't matter. You couldn't change. I knew he was going to save the company. I was backstage at an event years ago with Wade, the CEO of Zapier, and when Zapier's super hot, it was just blowing up, right? And we're talking about recruiting VPs, and he said this. He says, "I'm lucky if half really care." That's a gem. Not that they're great and they can run the campaigns and hire 87 people to do the podcast, but if even half of my VPs care like a mini founder, care enough, like then you fly. You fly, right? Because it's so tough as a founder, CEO, you're so lonely. And you get one person on your management team that cares as much as you, like that area gets so much better, right? That area. You get two and they collaborate. You get three, and I don't care where you are. I don't care if you're behind. I don't care if the competition's killing you. I don't care if you have 3 VPs or SVPs, whatever. See, they care almost as much as you do. No one has that. No one has that. No, they're all mercenaries. They're all mercenaries at the competition, right? So I would say if you've never hired before, get a little advice from someone that has. have the best whatever interview that person to, the best sales leader, engineering leader, product leader. But if you know this is the person, just be polite to your investors, but ram that hire down, whatever it takes. And they'll often have a wrinkly resume, right? They'll often have a wrinkly resume.
Yep. You are taking that risk on for yourself. Now it's your job to make sure they're really successful.
Here's the thing, if you love them, you'll backfill them. If you don't love them, you won't. If you love them, what you'll say is just like any great relationship, you're like, okay, well, Henry is great, but he doesn't love marketing and social media. You just do it for Henry, right? If you're not sure about Henry, you just watch. Okay, let's give him another quarter. But you'd only backfill the ones, like when you love someone on your team, I hate these home metaphors, but if you love your partner, if you love the spouse, you're going to backfill them too, right? You're not going to nag them because they're not as good you just do it for them, right? You just if they're not so good with the finances or good with planning the trip, you just plan the trip for them because it takes you an hour. I hate planning. I hate all the reservations. Oh my God, I want to pull my hair out. You do that for 5 minutes for me, I'm in love forever, right? So you do that for your VPs, for your management team, right? You don't nag them where they're weak, you backfill them. And that's why if you don't love them, they almost always fail too, right? No matter how good they are on paper, if you don't love them, you don't backfill them. You just watch.
Yeah, it's really interesting advice. Are you looking to, if you're a CEO and you're looking across your team, in the areas that you see weakness on your team, are you stepping up and helping them backfill? Are you backfilling in those areas?
And maybe even more, are you okay with it because everything else is so good anyway? You're sort of saying hey, this person's only 80% of the 100, but it's such a good 80, I'll take it. Whereas the ones you said that you're sort of not so sure, you actually might want to see them fail so you can get them move on.
You don't want to see them fail, but you're just not going to backfill them. And the other tell, if you want to know, if you're asking yourself, do I have that person on your team, right? Here's my simple tell. Do you look forward to the one-on-one?
Yeah.
The ones that solve your the one you're on the journey together that solve your problems, not only do you look forward to it because it's a little bit cathartic, no matter how tough it is, you look forward because you actually want to help them. Henry, tell me, we're flipping around, you're on what's going on? And I hear that Henry's stressed about this thing. He's so good, I'm looking forward to helping him, right? And if you're dreading the one-on-one, if you cancel it, if you realize that whatever Jensen from NVIDIA said he doesn't do one-on-ones, so you tell them you don't have to do it anymore, it's a sign. It's you should. That's where I think he's so obviously one for the ages, but I think that's where he gives founders bad advice. I think when you're scaling, these one-on-ones are magical moments with your teammates, right? They're not just torture. I see one-on-ones as therapy session. It's like The Sopranos. It's like Tony going in. Your VP should be able to go in and have a little therapy. Your good ones, because it's hard, right?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I changed this year is that I went from doing a stand-up with my executive leadership team once a week to doing it every day for an hour. And so my entire executive team gets together for 1 hour every single day, and we have an agenda, and there are things across the company that we go over. And it's the one meeting on my schedule that I look forward to every single day. And when it was 1 hour once a week, they were painful meetings. This is really an interesting thing. They were painful meetings. Sometimes we'd have 20 minutes of stuff for an hour-long meeting, and I'd be trying to fill in the gaps. When we went to 1 hour every single day, full agenda every single day, all the way out to the last minute. And people told me like, wow, that's a big commitment. 1 hour a day feels like a lot. And I'm like, you know what? Spending an hour a day with the key lieutenants at the company who are driving all of the process and changes and team building feels like the minimal amount you should be spending with your team, not like the super maximum amount.
Henry, I'll just add that I think one thing you've left out is that he also required us, those who are on ELT, to stop having meetings with each other on the side. So I got rid of 8 one-on-ones, him plus everyone else, because we would just hash it out there together, right? So he basically made the point that if you're going to talk about it over here on the side, talk about it in front of everyone, get everyone's input, and we'll move forward faster.
I think what we learned during that little nasty bug that went around is that scrums aren't just for engineering. That the idea behind a daily scrum, I remember the first time I had a product team, I'm like, I can't do this every day. What do you mean you guys are gonna stand up in a room for 15 minutes and just go write your code? And my co-founder was like, you have to come. I'm like, I'm not coming every day. Like you're the product guy, you hang out with the team. I'm not gonna do it, but it turned out that idea of the scrum is applicable to all functional areas. Right, we just never ran this experiment until we all, for a little while became distributed teams, and it works, right?
Henry, I want to drill into one more thing Jason said, and then we're going to keep moving. One thing that you just mentioned, that there was a couple of folks at EchoSign that you didn't see it in them at first, but then they later went on to be CROs. An interesting thing you said, because I was at a dinner in Denver last week with 2 people who were ICs with me at Google, who went on to be CROs of public companies, and I didn't really see it for them at the time either. There must be a lesson in there when you think about like what changed or what maybe that person did to get there. What was it?
Well, I don't know. I think I'll simplify it to my SaaStr learning. Founder-led sales, you need to hire the type of sales reps that you would buy from, that you believe in. That's it, that you would buy, for real. This is the mistake. Every time when I talk to a founder where they hit a roadblock in founder-led sales, is the classic SaaStr question. I always ask the question, what would you have bought from Henry? And they're like, yeah, you're right. The resume, I didn't really buy it from it. That's the test. And you believe in them. When you have a VP of sales that actually is your wingman that you believe in, they're going to hire a much more heterogeneous type of people. They're going to hire folks that are very product oriented. They're going to hire reps that seem to have ADD. They're going to hire folks that are you get uncomfortable because they seem like they nag the prospect. You're going to hire folks that you feel like don't follow up quickly enough. But a great sales leader is going to look for the positive attributes and there is still creativity in sales. Even with AI, there's some creativity. He's going to let the creative be creative. And so I think the lesson is empower your sales leaders to hire a heterogeneous team when you flip from founder-led to VP or CRO-led. You got to trust them if they're performing, and then just give folks room to run. The tough part is if you're building a fast-growing organization, you can't promote enough people, right? There's actually some irony. Sometimes it's easier in a slow-moving organization because you don't hire as much and it's slow. You can actually almost promote anyone good. The irony is the faster you're growing, you're bringing in so much human capital. You can't promote every SDR to AE and every AE to director, but you got to try. And I think that's what Brendan and Sam and the rest of the team did over the years, even when I wasn't there, is give everyone a chance to get promoted for real and then build a team and hire a team. So everyone got their shot in a comfortable environment where they knew the boss and they could get promoted as an IC and then they could manage a few folks and then they could learn how to hire 2 to 3 folks with some help and not screw it up, right? Because that's where almost everyone fails on the way to a true VP of sales is they never learn to hire. They never learn to hire and they're a great IC. And then maybe if they're in a bigger company, maybe at ZoomInfo, I don't know, maybe if you go to director, you mostly inherit a team, right? A lot of times, right? You don't actually show up and they're like, you got to go hire 10 AEs. You hire 8 and then like the team brings in 1 or 2. So you actually don't, I'm not, a bigger company, you don't always learn recruiting tools. And so, but if you don't figure that out, you'll stumble, right? As soon as you get a leadership role. But I think they had the runway to do all this over 4 years, and it gave everyone a chance to do it in a sheltered way and learn. And I think they flew. And I remember one of these guys on our team that was one of our top 5 guys, and then for 4 years he was the #1 AE at Outreach, #1 from the day he started. Right?
What's his name?
What's that? Riley Devine.
Yep.
And I was like, I met him. I'm like, Brendan, this guy, I don't know. I don't get it. Like he worked from home in shorts. Like now that's normal. I didn't get it. But just gave the folks room to run and be the diverse, and that's the key, right? And so, but I think giving folks a chance to run and just promoting everyone you can, as hard as it is. There's not enough room on the org chart, but The ambitious want to be promoted in sales, right? I mean, the number one rookie error is not promoting your best SDRs. They leave. They leave. Yeah. You know, it doesn't matter how much you pay them, right?
Or how long they've been in it, like 3 months, 6 months, move them up.
And you're like, I'll create an IC track for you. And here's the thing, we think of SDR as an entry-level position, but the best ones are worth so much money. The best ones are worth much more than a mid-pack A, but the best ones are all ambitious, right? And so you gotta, if you're not looking to promote your best SDRs in 8 months, they're gonna leave.
And just, I thought I'd just take you through this hypothetical. And I think probably a lot of CROs, VPs of sales are dealing with this. But so I'm a new CRO or a new CEO at a $50 million revenue company. It's losing $10 million a year. And I have to get to break even in the next 2 quarters. I'm allowed to bring growth down a bit to do that, but I've got to get to break even. I have to stop losing $10 million a year. What am I doing? What advice would you give me?
Well, first of all, let's step back and use an interesting case study. Toast just I put it up on SaaStr. They just did their last. They just went profitable, not non-GAAP, but GAAP profitable. And they're pretty brutal at Toast. It's a tough model. It's SMB with low gross margins because of payments and negative gross margins on hardware. It is not an easy business. I mean, ZoomInfo is tough, but at least the data doesn't cost, you don't have to ship a tablet with it, okay, as hard as it is. It's a brutal business if you look at it. And they had to get profitable. You know this, right? The Wall Street said you got to get profitable, Toast. And so and Toast has more data on sales than I've ever seen in a public company. And they increased quotas 50%. They cut territories in half. This is classic old Salesforce. Everyone in sales hates it. I crushed it. I was President Circle. And then they cut my territory from Palo Alto to just the end of university, or they moved me to the Pensacola in Florida. Every salesperson has a story of their territory being cut in half and their quota doubled, right? It's a salesperson's nightmare. Totally worked at Toast. On every level it worked. At every level. So one option to answer your question is to be more of a badass. I think the tactical answer, 50 million, got to get profitable, right? The tactical answer for more kumbaya people is probably cut half your sales team. This always works. Concentrate your leads in tougher times. It may not work at maybe it doesn't work at ZoomInfo scale, but even at 50 million, it's going to work. Take whatever leads you get a month, 100, 1,000, and you're going to look and just look on a spreadsheet, okay? You know, Jason, Ben, and Henry close from 10 leads, they close 10,000. The average is 5,000. The bottom is 2,000. I know it's brutal. Just get rid of the bottom 40%. Just instantly get rid of them, and in 1 quarter your revenue goes up. Ultimately you need capacity, so that's one. Cut your sales team in half. Keep your closers. They'll make more. You'll make more in the short term. And then the second one, and that's cool. The second one that you have to do today, and this one's brutal. This one is not what you want to do, but you got to get profitable. You said, right? The second one you got to do is you got to retreat to your core ICP because it's cheaper. It's always cheaper to sell to your core ICP. And not only do we have to go multi-product here, we all have to find a cost-effective way to sell in strategies where we're not dominant, right? There are categories where ZoomInfo is so big, there are certain segments of the market where you win 80% of the deals, 70% of the deals. And so when times are tougher, you retreat to that, right? And there's other segments where you win 20%, or maybe you're in Europe, or there's regulated data. I don't know all this, you can tell me, right? And when times are good, you brute force that. You're like, let's go attack that hill where we close 5% of the deals. But it costs more money. It's not always, hopefully you break even on these outer circles, right? That's your goal as a founder, is like, let's have a core where the CAC works. And then once it works, let's add some layers where like the CAC's tolerable, or like, then let's add a third layer where if we just make $1, it's worth it because we're trying to win. We're not trying to be eighth, right? And so you cut these layers of the circle and you retreat to the core, and it feels good, and the close rates are high, but it's the start of a slow downward spiral to death. But I don't know that you have a choice, Henry, if there's no more money and there's no more money and you're 50 million, and this is a common scenario, right? So cut half your sellers, easy. It sounds brutal, but it's easy. Sell to your ICP, you know, it tastes good, but if you do this more than 4 quarters, the competition's gonna pass you by. They're just gonna pass you by, right? And it's so hard because we're in this efficiency era now, but to win, you gotta play dominant strategy. And one way or another, you gotta play in spaces where you're weak. This is the number one use of capital, venture capital. I mean, maybe discover by ZoomInfo. I don't know how that's a really good use, right? Buy your competitor. That's A+. But ultimately, you want to play. You don't just want to win where you all win all the deals, right? You want to play dominant strategy, and it's tough when you can't, right? Because if you have no money and your competitor has no money, great. You both stick to your little lily pads, right? You know, I'll do sales, you do marketing, I'll do Europe, I'll do US. But if you really want to win, and you want to be in the US, you know, Stripe needs to be in Europe, and Adyen needs to be competing here, and you can't, you know, you're sacrificing the dominant strategy if you don't play dominant. You got to play in categories where you lose most deals to win. This is a weird thing. You got to play in categories where you lose most deals.
And Jason, just walk through why. Why do you have to play in categories that you lose most deals?
Because you won't grow your market share. You won't grow your overall TAM enough. Yeah. We all start in this little. You tell me in the old days. I guess it was Discover. Who was your top? I remember you told me before, like the ZoomInfo and the Discover ICPs were different, right? One was more mid-market and one was SMB. Which one were you, SMB or mid-market?
Yeah, but I had a direct competitor before called Lemkin that was exactly the same thing.
Okay. But you at Discover and ZoomInfo had slightly different ICPs, right?
Yes, slightly different ICPs.
Yeah, so you could just hide. You just ram them together. That's the best way. I like that strategy. We can't all do it. But if you'd remain separate, you guys want to look at each other across the battlefield. Like you got to take share away, don't you?
Yeah, and I think actually that is what ZoomInfo was doing to Discover org. There were accounts where they were coming in, where we were like really penetrated in companies that sold to technology decision makers. We had the best data, no question about it. And we would beat them 80, 90% of the time. But then they started showing up into those core accounts and like basically Trojan horsing their way into larger accounts. They said, listen, I know you're in IT, you sell to IT and you have Discover org for that, but you also probably sometimes sell to the COO and sometimes to the CFO and sometimes to these other people. Get ZoomInfo for all of that. Then they got ZoomInfo and they found their way into the IT side.
Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't get this most extreme example. In the old days when we were competing with DocuSign, in the very beginning, we pretty much owned the Salesforce ecosystem because we were in the first generation of Salesforce. It wasn't that hard. You just had to produce a good integration that actually worked. Most of them didn't work. And then you would kind of get all the leads that existed. And then DocuSign 3 years later figured out they wanted to get into real estate, into sales. And they would go in and they would find all of our accounts, right? And they would offer them 2 years free, unlimited use, unlimited anything. And we kind of laughed. We're like, this is a sign of desperation, right? It was a sign of dominant strategy. We're going to go long, okay? And we'll throw 5, 10, 20 million, and even 20 or 30 people into this. And they did, and any marketing program Salesforce would do, they were there. You want the 500K booth at Dreamforce? We're in, and the product's free. Okay, and as a first-time founder, I'm like, we just keep winning these deals. Like we just won Google for 500K and Comcast for 400K and Facebook, and we had this great sales team, and we had a 10x feature that we would beat them, but they were doing this dominant strategy. And if they're doing it and you don't, like ZoomInfo going to your accounts, you're going to lose, right? So it's so easy to retreat to that lily pad or whatever this crummy metaphor I'm using. But you got to keep expanding because, you know, like you said, how you going to add 400 million, 400 million? It's just you got to expand your surface area for your TAM, right? Related to that, one of the things I took for granted as a founder, and I see this is the number one issue in sales today, is everyone was a product expert. Now it's easy in a sales tool, but what I just showed you was everyone was a product expert, weren't they? That demo was so powerful of the redlining or the localization or the ease of use. I got to tell you, 90% of the sales folks I interact with today can't demo their product.
100%. I think this is
You're going to lose all those deals.
Well, they have their SE to do it for them, right? I'm just kidding. No, it's sad. It's sad.
I'll tell you where I think it doesn't matter for what it's worth. It doesn't matter in the super enterprise. In the super enterprise, particularly if you're on the account management side, you probably don't need to be the greatest product expert ever to be the best enterprise account manager in the world. But everywhere else, it's like painful to hear answers to very basic product questions get like flubbed or not nailed. Because, you know, like in the early days, we were all product experts. Every salesperson knew the nuances of integrating ZoomInfo into Salesforce, or how you installed the Salesforce native application, or how you handled duplicates, or how you did hierarchy. And I think like that nuance for most sellers is gone. They don't really know the product or particularly know the use case that they're solving for with the product.
And you know what drives me crazy? There's so much content on LinkedIn, so many thought leaders on LinkedIn. Everyone's talking about building relationships in sales, right? Now, the number one way I think you build a relationship in sales today, no matter what, is being a product expert. If you literally the biggest guru in the sales data space, the biggest guru in your industry, and you learn a little bit how to ask for the close, you will destroy the competition. There's too many vendors, too much is being cut, too much is being rationalized. My time is short. I'm not adding 50 SaaS vendors, I'm shrinking I want to talk to an expert. I don't want to talk to this person that thinks they're a people person. I don't need a people person, I need an expert, right? The super enterprise, maybe the golfing still works, but looking back, I haven't thought about this in a long time. Keith Crack came into DocuSign and blew it up, took him public. He was great. He had been CEO of Ariba, great. But the guy before him got fired, and he was the 5th CEO before him. They went through 5 CEOs until they had Keith. And the 5th CEO got fired in part because they lost Facebook to us. And Facebook, even back then, was pretty big. And they thought they already did a commit to the board that they were committing this huge deal to Facebook. And we won it, and part of it was that we were local. We had a 10x feature. This localization was so important to Facebook. But we talked to our guy later. He's like, they came in and never demoed the product. They did now this wasn't Keith. Yeah. Keith would have made it happen. Yeah. But the guy before, they did it, and the CRO committed to the deal, and they backslapped, and they talked about the back 9 at Pebble, and brought him nice vests, probably. And we went and just, this doesn't work forever, but, we heard this story later. I'm like, I can't imagine going to the meeting and this product's about ease of use, but, and I just feel like we've deteriorated. We have deteriorated. And not enough CEOs just ask this question in sales. We don't ask to sell me this pen anymore, and we don't ask folks to do a demo anymore. We used to come in the office, and you don't have to do it the first meeting, but you wouldn't hire someone in sales until they could sell you this pen and do maybe you did. I never ever hired anyone that didn't do the demo or the sell me this pen. Yeah. Now we're just like, oh, I got to hire 100 reps today. You worked at ZoomInfo and you're nice? Done.
Right. How do you think AI changes what great leadership looks like in go-to-market?
I think it's an interesting question. I don't know the answer, but what I do think, I think the story of getting rid of the 4 reps because they asked the AI same question 7,000 times, I think it will lead to a next level of transparency for leadership, right? Just like with chorus and call recording, like that was jaw-dropping when it started, right? The whole your jaw fell out. Like now it's table stakes in a million products, right? I mean, chorus is the best one, but we remember about whenever that stuff launched, like but not only was it jaw-dropping, but it was jaw-dropping for transparency. And I actually, you asked for leadership. I think we're going to have to guess a lot less and rely just on dashboards a lot less. And I think that's a big change, right? It is a big change. It will lead to a lot of frictions. That's maybe my niche answer to the leadership question, right? I think it may not produce all the benefits for individual knowledge workers that they think. It may lead to more, like at first you'd be like, my boss is listening to my calls on chorus, and then like a year ago you'd be like, there's a note taker on my Zoom, but now like it's all normalized, right? And AI is gonna rip through everything in your email box, everything you do, and it's gonna tell Henry exactly. And like if you guys know anything about the QA space in customer success, I think everything in post sales is actually ahead of sales and AI, far ahead, like 2 to 3 years ahead post sales than sales. And there's a QA space where for years you've been manually grading thousands of customer success agents. And I've done one of these investments. It's completely ripped through the space. Now everything is AIified in QI. If I have 1,000 folks picking up the phone at my e-commerce company, I'm not gonna grade them manually anymore. The AI is gonna literally do everything for me, suck up all that data and tell me Lemkin's gotta go. Or everything's been automated. Like all the stuff we're talking about in sales has already happened post-sales. Yeah. Like maybe almost to a fault, right? If you look at Zendesk or Gorgeous or Intercom, they're so far ahead of sales. Yeah. They're so far ahead of sales, mainly because people want to lay off people. This is the main reason, but they're so far ahead. And part of that is this transparency that didn't exist today. I think it's going to happen in sales over 2 years. And a different way of looking at it, in my opinion, if you want to see where AI is going in sales, just pop over to post-sales. Yep. just pop over to our friends that are trying to automate. We ask, will humans be automated away in sales? Right? It's a fun question. Already happened already. If you look at the homepage of everyone doing customer support software, if you look at Zendesk, Intercom, or Gorgeous, and you squint, you know what they all say if you squint? You can lay off 40% of your team with AI. You can lay off 40% of your team. We can argue whether that works in sales or not, but it's the same. It's just there's more pull there in post-sales, right? So we should learn from it in sales for leadership, for transparency, for product. Like, here's your little crystal ball. It's not quite going to work in sales, but it's the same tsunami that's going to come, right?
That's a great parallel.
And Jason, when you think like this is an interesting one because I actually don't think and I could be wrong, but I don't think that regardless of how much more efficiency and pipeline you say you're going to bring with your AI sales solution, that people are going to let go of their salespeople to bring in your AI-driven Copilot thing. And they'll believe there will be productivity boosts, but it's not as compelling. You know, like there are two things that I felt like are really compelling in AI land. One, the Zendesks and customer support people of the world basically going like, yeah, you can get rid of 40% of your customer support people and replace it with this bot. It'll handle 99% of what comes through. And then on the other side, GitHub being like 20% more developer productivity. And I think on that side, people have talked about developer productivity, sales rep productivity, whatever productivity forever. But for whatever reason, it is like etched in my brain that GitHub will give me 20% more productivity. GitHub's Copilot will give me 20% more productivity out of my engineers. Maybe because my engineers are hard to hire, and I know that when you get a good one, you really want to keep them. And the idea that I can get one more person out of 5 people just by giving them this tool is like the most compelling thing in a software business. But I haven't found anybody else nail messaging that like really compels somebody around AI. What we see for sure, the ability of leveraging AI to understand all of your customer and prospect data in your company, and then prioritize accounts that you should be going after based on a really deep understanding of your ICP, who you've talked to, what signals are being generated. This is like back in the day, Everstring and Infer and Predictly, there are all these like early 2010s companies that were trying to do this. And generative AI absolutely unlocks that in a big, big way. Then just like, can AI write a better first email than my brand new SDR can try to figure out on their own? Absolutely. And at a minimum, it gets you a much better starting position. But once that cycle starts automating, that's going to be really an inflection point from a new sales perspective.
Yeah, I think maybe the meta question is, if you started engineering, it's like we think all these innovations would lead to us needing fewer engineers. No, the engineers just get better. Every innovation we've had in software, from open source to just using Stack Overflow to Copilots, they just get better. We can't run ZoomInfo with 3 engineers. It's just they can produce much better software, right? And it's an arms race. It goes up, right? The question for sales is, will everyone in sales that works more than 15 hours a week get better from AI? Or will that happen, but the slider will get rid of a little bit of them? I don't know. I'm waiting to see. I'm observing. But there will be.
Theoretically, they can just get better.
They can, right? But maybe we're going to see more toasts where the AI is the lubricant to force up the quotas and cut the territories. And it's like, great, here's your good news. There's good news and bad news, Henry. Good news is ZoomInfo Copilot for the whole team. You don't have to share email addresses. We've got enterprise-wide. Bad news is your quota's up 50% of your territories shrunk in half. Yeah. It might be some version of that with AI. We'll have to see.
Yep. Yeah. Jason, we gotta wrap really soon. Thank you so much for spending the time with us. Our traditional last question that we ask everyone is, who's the smartest person you've ever met, and what did you learn that you took away?
I'm just gonna say smartest people in tech, right? I'm actually, maybe Henry would be in this category, but I didn't meet him at this moment that I'm going to describe. But The two best I've met are Peter Gassner, who's CEO of Veeva, right? They raised $3 million and are worth $34 billion. Pharma and Vault for pharma and CRM. I mean CRM and Vault for pharma. And I admit this one is slightly toxic. Travis Kalanick, when I met him pre-Uber, barely met him. I was just invited to a lunch. And what the hell did Peter Gassner running a 8-figure deal pharma company and Travis Kalanick running, a pirated music company and then Uber and then a cloud kitchen have in common? This is the magic of the best founder CEO. Literally, they could explain the future to me in the crispest terms. The crispest terms. When I met Peter through one of our investors, I said, nicest guy, Peter Gassner. I mean, intense, but nice. He's like, okay, here's what's going on with Veeva. Oh, what are you doing at Echo? He's like, okay, here's how the next 5 years might roll out for you at EchoSign. And he was pretty right. He was pretty right in a way I haven't seen before. And then I remember meeting Travis Kalanick when I was really young in the early days, when video was just exploding on the internet. He's like, here's where video will go. Here's where something like YouTube will go. Here's how it will use. Here's how it will percolate through society. Here's how it will change how we consume video. And I'm looking at like 320 times 240 pixelated videos on my phone. And I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? And everything from music to video that he said. And it's not blabbling. It was actually taking all of that, seeing 5 to 8 years in the future and compressing it into mortal communication. It's an incredible skill, right? And I think the best CEOs can see further into the future than the rest of us can, and then they can bring that into the present in a way we can see it. And it's for me, that's magic, right? So it's hard enough to see like 2 years into the future, but the best can somehow really see 5 or 10. And then you can just do crazy things if you can see that far, right? You don't have to be 100% right. So those are my learnings, and like I just remember my jaw dropping with both Peter and Travis. Like, Jesus, these guys are like here.
Yeah, amazing. This is how I feel when I hear John Collison talk, or is it? I'm like I'm like very far away from understanding the world the same way that they do.
But you know what the beauty as CEO is, actually, you don't have to be that I'm not saying you're not, but you don't have to be the person. You just hire them on your team. That's like the best CEO. These are the best ones. But you can be like, you have to be humble enough as a CEO to say, listen, I got to hire VPs smarter than me, right? That's another cheat code, right? Is seeing that, and then they're not all the CEOs of the top whatever companies weren't all first in their class from wherever, Harvard and Stanford, were they? That's the classic thing, right? You can hire them. That's just being. You want to hire the best, but also if you think you're just pretty smart, hire folks relentlessly smarter than you under you. You be the visionary, and then that's the way to backfill it. Just if you're 130 IQ, just hire some 150s. It's fine. Like you don't have to do it all yourself.
Yeah. Well, I love it. Jason, thank you so much for coming on the ZI Labs podcast.
This is great.
Truly an honor for me.
Thank you,
I've been
Jason.
following you forever.
You.
I really appreciate the time. And we hope to have you on again.
Okay, sounds good. All right, thanks everybody.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the ZoomInfo Labs podcast.
With new episodes dropping every Monday and Thursday, subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me and Ben on LinkedIn and visit zoominfo.com/labs to get in touch.